Welcome to Madlit Musings, the podcast where you get to eavesdrop on your favorite authors without getting caught. I've been stoked to have authors like Angela Hunt, Bill Myers, Nicole Deese, Tessa Afshar, comedian Bob Smiley, and more on the show, and this year I have another great lineup of storytellers and truth-sayers. If you love to eavesdrop at coffee shops like I do, this is the podcast for you. It's where we get real, we get tough, we laugh, and we might even cry. It's where we meet authors on a different level, where every story and podcast episode has its own heartbeat. So hang out with me today. I'm Jaime Jo Wright, your host at Madlit Musings. This is your podcast for real chats with real authors about real life. Today's episode was brought to you by Baker Publishing Group, with Revell and Bethany House Publishing as divisions. We're super excited to be sponsored by Baker Publishing Group and to bring you their fabulous authors and their fabulous lineup for 2025. Be sure to check them out at bakerpublishinggroup.com and also check out their online bookstore at bakerbookhouse.com. Hi everyone, it's Jaime Jo Wright here at Madlit Musings, and I'm happy today because I've already been chatting for half an hour, I think. With my guest. I have Valerie here. Valerie, I'm not going to say your last name because I forgot to ask how it's pronounced, and I know this.
It rhymes with fussy. Just remember fussy Luesse.
Luesse.
Although I try not
Valerie
to be.
Luesse, but don't be fussy. You're not even remotely fussy from anything I've ever witnessed about you.
Thank you.
You know, it's funny because we've been talking, and I've already been smacked in the face with how different the colloquialisms are between where I live in Wisconsin, raised north of everything, and you're down south, and bringing up all these things like, oh, it's just like a pie in a pan, and it's sunny yellow. I'm like, we just don't talk that around here.
You'll notice so many Southernisms relate to food. We are an eating people. We are a cooking and eating people.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I guess I would have to say whether I should be proud of this or not. I don't know, but here in Wisconsin, it's drinking. So there's there's plenty of beer drinks to go around in this German world.
You know, there's some of that down here too.
Well, we're not here to talk about food or liquor.
No, we're not. We're not.
Anybody who's listening going, oh, this isn't my type of podcast.
Don't tell Mama.
No, don't tell Mama. But we're here to talk about your latest book, which is called The Light on Horn Island. I love it. The other thing I love on book covers, because I'm looking at your book cover, answer me this, Valerie, because you're the one out of anybody I know who's going to know the answer to this.
Oh, dear.
This is kind of a joke. Why do they write a novel? Because it's obviously kind of a novel, isn't it? Like, you know, that The Light on Horn Island, a novel. And I've seen that on so many books. And I'm like,
it is.
People not know it's a novel when they pick up a book?
I am not sure why they do that. I guess it could be a poetry collection. I've never seen a poetry collection as thick as a novel.
No. And I mean, a novella is short. But I don't know. It's just a weird thing that I noticed as I'm looking at your cover. Beautiful cover. Beautiful cover. And that's not a negative thing to say it's a novel. I just wondered, do we need to declare? It's like saying this is a book. It's a novel. It's like I don't go to the store and buy bananas that say a banana on it.
I love the cover, and I can brag on it because it had nothing to do with my skill level at all. It was all the creative folks at Baker.
They did a beautiful job.
And I just love what they did. I really do.
They did. And that's supposed to be set in Mississippi, correct?
It is. Okay. It is.
All right. Well, I think probably what we should do is you should just give us an overview of what we're talking about here.
Well, I'm going to put this right back to you. Do you find it's very hard to do that? That the worst question that I dread is, what's your book about?
Did you notice I didn't say the words, what's your book about? I said, why don't you just tell us about what we're going to be talking about? I was a little bit less direct.
Because you kind of go, well, it's about life and love and death. And
I know. And I was like, well, there's a boy and a girl and somebody dies.
There's a boy and a girl. And, no, this one it does have a lot of personal stuff in it, in that the gist of it is Edie Gardner is my main character. She's in late 20s. She's an Alabama girl who's been living and working in New York. She moved up there with her best friend. after college, and then she suffers just a traumatic loss in
Okay.
her life, a great personal loss. And her grandmother, whose nickname is Punk, Cherami, who's a Louisiana woman transplanted to Mississippi, um, basically says, the Gulf Coast can heal any wound. So
Okay.
why are you up there hurting all by yourself?
Sure.
And so Edie comes south
Okay.
and gets connected with her grandmother and her grandmother's posse, who are three older ladies that have
Love
been
it.
friends, as they say, since Methuselah was a toddler. And
There's that Southern coming out again.
and so I love multi-generational stuff
Yes.
with women. And also in the picture is the best friend of Edie's mother,
Okay.
who has some sort of situations and issues and struggles that she's dealing with too. And so all these women are basically brought together, and there is a mysterious antique dealer, or is he, who introduces the ladies to this Victorian parlor game called Confessions. And it was a real thing. Probably
Really?
most people might know or have read about Marcel, not, yeah, Proust. It is Marcel, and it go back to college literature. Anyway, uh, he was a practitioner of
Okay.
confessions. And it was a parlor game in Victorian times, and there would be a page of questions facing a blank page, and you would pass the book around, and your friends would each answer that list of questions, and then the list would repeat
Okay.
throughout the book. So
Okay.
same list over and over and over. Different people write their answers. And the thing about it is the questions sound simple, but they can turn very serious depending on how you answer. So, for example, and this example is used in the book, what is your favorite flower can become a very sad question if the answer is the gardenias my wife kept by her bedside as she died.
Oh,
What
right.
is your biggest regret in life can become very funny if it's, oh, that atrocious hat I wore to my sister's wedding.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so the ladies start playing this game as Edie is working through her stuff.
Okay.
There is a particular relationship from her teenage years, her first serious love, that she gets memories of because it happened. She met him
Sure.
on Horn Island.
Okay.
And so things develop there. And so the gist of the book is about these women talking to each other through really what life is all about for a woman, whether it's their romantic relationships, their children, their disappointments, their aspirations, but in a very hopefully entertaining and Southern way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time they're doing this, there's a little bit of a mystery in that Edie is trying to figure out who exactly this antique dealer, his name is Jason Toussaint, really is, because they have a special connection.
Okay.
And he in fact guides her through some of her working her way through,
Sure.
the sorrow that she's had in her life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that long-winded enough because I'm from the South and I can.
No, that was very succinct. I liked it.
We
I
can be
liked
here
it.
next Tuesday.
It's better than just. It's better than just the back cover copy because that can almost be too short sometimes. I'm like, okay, please expound because I want to know more. So. Okay, so let's do this first. Let's talk a little bit about the location where you have the set. So I'm gonna massacre it, but the Bayou Duchesne.
I think that's right. Actually, I made it up. I made it flex.
It's right. Let's just say it's right.
I've never been sure if it's Shane or Shin. It could be Bayou Duchesne. I get my French accents mixed up down there.
Yeah.
But I made up the name of the place, that specific place, but the area surrounding is very real. Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and of course Biloxi and Gulfport, past Christian, all those very real places. And it's just one of the most interesting and I think overlooked coasts in the South because, everybody knows Florida Panhandle and, all that kind of stuff, which are beautiful beaches. And that's where I grew up going, Gulf Shores, Alabama. But Mississippi is completely different from all of them, in part because they don't have the big surf like the other, because they have barrier islands off the coast that sort of block the waves. And so I kind of explained that in the book. You have to get on the south side of Horn Island to get the waves, to get
Okay.
the open Gulf. But in between those islands and the mainland, it's flat. It's like a mirror, the water is. And the towns are right up to the water. And so there's not that separation between the locals and the tourists. You can be in downtown Biloxi and step out on the street and see the water.
Okay.
It's right there.
Wow.
And which was devastating during Hurricane Katrina.
I imagine.
This area it got to be real important to Dave and me because my husband is a gearhead, and they have this huge vintage car show down there every year. And so we were going and loved it down there. And so we really felt what happened with the hurricanes and the storms that have come along. But you just feel at home there. I can't explain. It's very different from any other beachy areas.
Okay.
And Horn Island was made famous by local artist Walter Anderson, and his descendants are still in Ocean Springs doing artwork, shearwater pottery, and there's an art festival named after Peter Anderson down there. But he would just basically abandon his family and row out to Horn Island for just a month at a time and camp and paint. And he just captured these wild shapes of the trees and the slash pines and things on this island, which I've just been fascinated with. I have not seen the actual island. Oh, you're kitty cat. That's awesome.
Very well, buddy. He just, for anybody listening, my cat just tried to jump on the back of my chair and kind of took a crash flying fall. You need help, buddy?
Is he all right?
He's fine. He looks a little bit offended that he didn't make it on a podcast for everyone to see your failure. Boo.
But that area I know like the back of my hand. Horn Island I know only through films and art and video. So my imagination went wild on Horn, and I'm dying to go. But I've looked at so many pictures of it and video tours of it and paintings of it that I just sort of imagine myself there.
Right.
But that Mississippi vibe is really interesting because to me, the coast of Mississippi is much more akin to New Orleans than it is the rest of Mississippi.
Okay.
So if you can imagine that, little New Orleans, it kind of has that vibe running through it.
Gotcha. Now, Mississippi is one of those states I have not made it to yet. I've made it to quite a few states. So I'm going to have to plan a trip.
It is worth the trip. It actually is. The coast is one of my two favorite parts. The Delta is the other, which is the big flat Mississippi Delta along the Mississippi River. And that's a culture unto itself. It's just absolutely wonderful. So I just wanted to take people there. I just wanted them to see it. Yeah. I just wanted them to see it the way I see it.
Right. Well, and it helps to have somebody who's been there, lived in that area, that region. I mean, you're a Southern girl at heart. It's different than if I were to come down for a vacation and then go, I'm going to write a Southern fiction novel set on the Big Horn Island.
But the thing is, when I was at Southern Living, the last executive editor that I had before I retired for good and took myself out to pasture, she was a lifelong New Yorker. Okay. Most of the people on the staff of Southern Living are from the South. Okay. She's from New York, but she would see things that we didn't. She would see interesting stories because to us they were just everyday things. And it took her to say, this doesn't happen everywhere. Right. Very strange people. She was very much excited about the South, but she would see stories and see interesting things that those of us who grew up with it just totally missed. Right. Well, I am so fascinated. What is your cat's name?
Okay, my cat's name is Foo, and he's now jumped on top of the television set to get to the back of my chair. So, are you happy now, Foo? He likes to have his cameos on the podcast that people are watching on YouTube. He gets his moments in the limelight and kind of steals it now and then. Are you going to be a good boy? Nope, he's not. I'll probably end up getting attacked halfway through here. So. All right. Well, that's cool. So Mississippi, coastal Mississippi, and all that. And then we have this parlor game. Now, one of the things that it does say on the back of your book, it says it's a parlor game called Confessions, which asks players a series of ever more personal questions. It seems like harmless fun at first, but the game has a way of uncovering secrets, including a heartbreaking disappearance that has haunted one of the players for decades. So, how much secrets and elements of personal mystery are involved in this? And I realize it's not like a mystery novel. That's not what I'm implying. But
But I love a little element of mystery. I
yeah,
always have since I was a little girl.
okay.
I always liked books that had a little secret to
Mm-hmm.
them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're probably about, I don't know, maybe midway through the book. And what happens with Confessions is the first time they play the game, they go
Okay.
through a bunch of questions
Okay.
together, all the
Yep.
ladies. And then they decide, being Southern women, that it would be more fun to eat while they do this. So they
I
decide,
have to move south. I am in the wrong state.
listen, the book club visits down here are awesome because
Oh
they will go
my
through
gosh.
the book finding food and then they will cook it and
Oh
it's
my gosh.
it's wonderful. But no, they decide that they're going to have basically like a supper club.
Okay.
They're going to take turns hosting the group, and the host will draw one question out of a hat, and they will all just answer this
Okay.
one question.
Yeah.
And I did that because I realized pretty quickly that this is going to get exhausting,
Mm-hmm.
just going through tons of questions over and over and over again. So we'll just pick some. And so the questions that they draw out things about these women that maybe the others didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like one of the questions is, what did you love best about the one that you love best? You know,
Oh.
and it makes you think these women are almost 80 or
Okay.
80-ish, and
Yeah.
then 80 is in her 20s, and then her mother's best friend, Charlie, is in her early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have sort of a range of ages. And
Right.
as they reflect back on things, you see
Yeah.
what's common and what's not about all of them. And
Mm-hmm.
Charlie, in particular, um, they know that she's dealing with something. They know that she's depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they know that there's something kind of eating at her.
Oops, I think we just lost your mic.
Uh-oh.
There we go. You're back. Nope. Now you're gone again.
Am I back now?
You're back now.
Okay.
There you
Okay.
are. Oh, now you disappeared again.
Okay. Am I good now?
Now you're good.
Okay. Hold that thought.
Don't move. Whatever you do, do not shift your position.
Do not. Do not. Um, but some of the things I'm trying to get at
Mm-hmm.
that are one that that first love in your life, the one that
Yeah.
really, just
Does it
arrow
for
to
you.
the heart, and
Yeah.
that you never quite forget,
Right.
and how that affects different women different
Mm-hmm.
ways. Some women lose that first love, some women marry that first love,
Mm-hmm.
some women marry that first love and then lose that first love.
Right.
So
Right.
how does that first young love shape
Mm.
your life? So that plays into it. Um, how does wondering whether that person really felt the same way that you
Mm.
did affect you
Sure.
and how you remember things?
Right.
Um, can you ever be sure you're remembering how they actually were? Or are you just remembering how you wish they were, how you wanted them to
Mm.
be?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some things that these women sort of dive into.
Okay.
And what they find out about Charlie, who is, she's actually Edie's godmother, is that both of these women have suffered a tremendous loss, but nobody knew about Charlie's. Nobody
Mm.
knew what her loss was.
Okay.
And so these confessions bring it all kind of up to the surface. So,
Sure.
so the confessions is one main element. The other main element is that at the antique store where Edie gets a job working with
Mm-hmm.
the mysterious Jason, he hires her to help him do sort of a retrospective of another great storm of record down there, which was Hurricane Camille. And
Okay.
he's gotten this cache of images of the storm, and he wants Edie
Oh,
to help him document them and figure them out.
okay.
And so they can share them with the community. He says,
Mhm.
I'm not going to sell other people's pain, but I would like for the community to be able to see these amazing images that were
Mhm.
donated anonymously. And so Edie starts working on that. And those two things become interconnected, the questions and confessions and the pictures that Edie is working with from the
Mm.
past. And they kind of,
Intersect.
they sort of intersect
Okay.
in a big way.
Okay.
If that
So,
helps.
and we can't say anything more because that would spoil the
Yeah.
story.
Well, I can't say this much is that what Edie has experienced was something that I experienced personally. It and so the way that she's wrestling with it and the questions she's as it were things that I asked as a young woman
Mhm.
because I was going through something very similar to her, the kind of loss she experiences. And she's got some big questions like
Sure.
I don't see any mercy. I didn't see any mercy
Mm.
in this situation.
Mhm.
I'm supposed, she says, my grandmother tells me you get to a certain point where you just need to pray for God's mercy. And she says, I never saw it.
Mm.
And so Jason steps in and says, did you look in the mirror? And I'll just leave it at that because
Oh,
he turns it around for her to see that maybe you were looking in the wrong place.
right.
Maybe you didn't know where the mercy was directed,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so she's she's trying to figure out what she saw and did it really mean what she thought it did,
Yeah.
um and how does she move forward with all of that.
Right. Right. Well, it sounds like the book brings up a lot of good questions about really how our pasts shape who we are and
Mhm.
who we become, and how we look at our pasts and choose to respond to it.
There's a famous
Affects it.
quote, and I should know for sure what very famous person said it or wrote it. I think it might have been Faulkner, but it was the past isn't dead, it isn't even past.
Oh,
you know
right. That's so true though, because it seems like the past for so many of us follows. Like I was talking to somebody, a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying, well, what's done is done, it's over, you move on, and the past just fades into the past. And I'm like, maybe for you,
yeah.
but I feel like it just loads itself into the backpack of past things that I'm still carrying on my shoulders, good and bad.
Mhm.
And they just continue to go with me. And I think they will until the day I die. So it's
I've read
interesting.
some. I hope you don't mind my saying this, but I've read some
Uh-uh.
beautiful things you've written about your mother
Oh,
on Facebook, and
yeah.
I just I won't say I love reading them. I appreciate them. I think they're beautiful, but I'm sorry that they're
Oh,
true.
sure. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it is true. And it's one of those things where whether it's the passing of a parent or like you said, a lost love, that first love, does make such an impact on your life.
mhm,
And so it could be positive or negative in both
exactly.
situations.
Exactly.
Um, and yet we have to come to the choice of one, almost reliving the past in order to reconcile with it.
True.
And then
True.
what do you do with that reconciliation? Do you um, fight what you didn't want to happen, or do you accept it? Do you look for the benefits? Like you said, Lane, like God didn't show mercy. Well, now wait a second. Maybe not in the way that you wanted him to,
Mhm.
or maybe he went from a different direction. But those are big questions because it's like you experience these things and then you're like, well, why didn't God fulfill the promises that he said he was going to fulfill in the
Right.
Bible?
Right.
Is he
It's
trustworthy?
I put a saying. This was in a different book, a previous book called The Key to Everything, but
Hmm.
it was a saying actually from my own life too, and it was something really devastating that I had been through, and I was so upset by it that I couldn't go to church.
Hmm.
If I went to church,
Hmm.
I just bawled.
Hmm.
And I remember going to a church as a visitor because I couldn't face all the people that I knew and just
Right.
bawling.
Yeah.
This poor woman on the pew next to me going, "Dear, are you all right?" It's like,
I'm
I am.
fine. Do you have any Kleenex?
But so I just quit going to church because I couldn't do it because I thought, well, I don't understand why God let this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I feel that way, I don't belong in church.
Mm.
And then um, I'm Southern Baptist,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided I needed to go to church, but I could not face the Baptists because we are up in your face, loving on you, whether you want us to or not. We are fixing to hug you, and
Oh,
we are going to be all about it.
your Baptist and my Baptist experiences are very different based on
Really?
regions. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I went to a Catholic church in downtown Birmingham.
Yes.
Picked probably the oldest Catholic church in
Sure.
Birmingham. And I just wanted that serenity.
Mhm.
Catholics have this serene,
Mhm.
there's just a peace in a Catholic sanctuary.
Mhm.
Um, so anyway, I decided that I was going to go there. And I was sitting in this old church, not really understanding everything that was going on, but still feeling
Mhm.
that peace. And I just looked around at the Stations of the Cross,
Mm.
and I
Mhm.
remembered Christ saying, why have you forsaken me?
Mm.
Yeah. My God, why have you forsaken me? And I thought, if Jesus could feel that way, then I am not above it.
No, no, no.
If Jesus could ask that question, um, then, God knows that we
Mhm.
feel that way sometimes. Where are you?
Mhm.
Why did you let this happen?
Mhm.
I think that's a very human thing. And that,
Yeah.
just that moment in that old Catholic church, um, and I ended up putting a scene like that in the key to everything because it just was like
Sure. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
moment of, well, yes, you can go back to
Mhm.
church. You don't have to be ready.
Right.
You don't
Right.
have to have it all together.
No. No. And I think that's one of the deficits that we've experienced in the formal church environment where we have this for whatever reason, and I don't know if it goes back traditionally or what, but there's this um, you have to have it together because you have faith. Therefore, you shouldn't question.
Right.
Um, and then even the tough questions like, why God, why? I mean, questions that King David screamed at God. And, you see all through scripture, for whatever reason, so often in a church environment, you find this expectation that, well, your faith must not be strong enough.
Exactly.
And so
Yes.
whether then it turns into either self-criticism or you take it as criticism or however it filters through, then all of a sudden you can't go before God anymore. Because if you go before him honestly, you're going to ask the questions. But if you can't
Exactly.
ask the questions, then you can't go before him honestly. So there becomes this wedge between you
Mhm.
and the Lord. And I think that's a deficit in the church. And I think we're growing through that and learning that, hey, we've got saints in the Bible that really, really duked it out with God. Let's just say they weren't, docile arguers.
Yeah,
But I take
it's
comfort in
true.
that, right?
Yeah, exactly. A church should be the place for broken people,
Right.
because we're all broken,
Yeah.
some more than others on any given hour,
Mm-hmm.
and that will shift and change. And then, um, but I don't know, I think that will stay with me my whole life,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
moment in that
absolutely.
old church,
Yeah.
or, you know,
Well, and I think
uh,
it's so true what you were saying too. I was in Rome, and I went to. This sounds like I was in Rome. I don't typically travel internationally, for the record, but I was in Rome, and I went to St. Peter's Basilica. And being Baptist, being very not Southern Baptist, so the Northern Baptist, even though that's not such a thing, up here we're not demonstrative at all.
really,
Right. So
oh,
you walk into church and there's a few huggers, but for the most part you're like, what are you doing? Why what? I have an aura. I have an aura. Do not cross the aura. And then you go into the church service and you're sitting in the pews and the hands are down, the shoulders are straight. Facial expressions should be kept to a minimum. That was my experience growing up, right? So, and then I go to St. Peter's Basilica and I walked in And it was such an interesting experience because I always was a little bit, for whatever reason, critical of the architecture, the money that's poured into architect, yada, yada,
Mhm.
and not understanding everything. But then you walk into this beautiful cathedral, and all of a sudden it was just this tiny, tiny glimpse of what it might be like to walk into the awesomeness and the beauty of the presence of God. And I was with my sister-in-law, and we just looked at each other and said, we're not talking. And we both went our own way in the basilica. And I ended up in this side cathedral, just sitting in a pew for probably a half an hour. And it was just, it's along the same lines of what you're saying, where you're just looking at symbolic reminders of the walk of Christ and how your past merges with your faith and those deep questions. And there was permission to ask them.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm teasing about the Baptist church. I love the Baptist church, but we are a rowdy group down here. I mean, there is laughing and talking. All of you don't walk into silence in a Southern Baptist church. There's the music going. I do love the Southern gospel music so
Mhm.
much. Um, but we are not a quiet people. And when Dave and I got married and we were planning our ceremony, and our pastor at the time and my parents' people were asking me about all these ceremonial things, where we're going to light the Trinity, and I was like,
Sure.
no, Baptist girls do not do ceremony well,
Right, right,
because we're not raised with it, and when we
right.
try, it can go badly, especially for somebody clumsy like me. So I said, I am not kneeling in a wedding dress. I can't kneel in my blue jeans. So, I'm not, it was
Love
very,
it.
our
Yeah.
photographer timed us. He said, y'all were at the altar 7 minutes flat. you know. But I just said, we're not raised. And now it's different, of course, in a big city church.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
In a little country church, you're not brought up with a whole lot of ceremony other than
Mhm.
communion and baptism,
Right. Yep.
but you're not brought up with a lot of
Mhm.
of the more, so I don't feel like I do that all that well. So anyway, it was just kind of funny. But
Oh, man. I love it. I love that you're bringing confessions really into your story with so many angles and ways of looking at things, and merging the past with faith and present relationships and unanswered questions and all of that. And I really want to know more about Jason, but I don't think I'm supposed to until I read the book.
well, there's some things I can tell you. One of the things that inspired that character, it's not really a thing, it's a person, but Killian Murphy was
Oh,
on
I love him.
so much. I know. What astounded me, I had seen him in several movies, and of course, he's just got this statue-like beauty
Yes.
to his face.
Yes.
But I had always seen him play villains,
Right. Yeah.
and he could be very frightening
Mm-hmm.
because he was not smiling. And
Right.
then when Oppenheimer came out and he started doing all these interviews, and I would see him being interviewed and talking about his teenage boys and his wife, and he's laughing and
Mm-hmm.
smiling. It like totally changed his face. And I've
Yeah.
never seen anybody's face so transformed by a smile. And I
Oh,
thought, I want to use that. I want to do something
yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
with the idea of someone who is completely unreadable,
Mm.
even a little scary when
Mm-hmm.
they aren't smiling,
Yeah.
but then the minute they do smile and let that guard down, they're completely different. And
Right.
that, I don't know why, that just fascinated me. Every time I would see him do an interview, I would
Mm-hmm.
it's like a totally different
Yeah.
person just by a smile.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to use that somehow in a character. And I used that in Jason.
All right.
Um,
So
because
when
you
we,
don't, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, so when we read Jason, we should be picturing Killian Murphy
And if you
as
would
the
like
movie
to,
model for it.
he did inspire the look and the mood of Jason. But I like the idea of having a character in a book where you aren't exactly sure who they are. That's just,
Yes.
to me as a reader, that's fun.
Yes. Yes.
And so he is definitely that character in this book. He gets close to Edie. He helps her on her journey, but you, I hope, don't know exactly who he is
Okay.
until the end. And I'm going to shut up now because I can't keep
Because
saying.
I can't keep. Yeah. Oh, that's your Southern charm, though, there, Valerie. No, I'll close on the Cillian Murphy conversation with an interview I saw him in, and yeah, he's got those icy blue eyes and very almost severe chiseled features, where you're kind of like, are you a nice guy to be around, or are you scary? And I realized in this interview that we were kindred spirits because they asked him, they said, "What do you like to do for fun? What do you like to do in your downtime?" And he sat there and he goes, "I like to sleep. I love sleep. I really like to sleep." And I'm like, I love you. I love
Yes, we could be friends. We
you.
could
Yeah.
go bowling. We
Yeah.
could totally go bowling.
We can just go
Yeah.
somewhere and sleep. I mean, it'd be the best friendship in the world. I don't know you from Joe Schmo, but we can sleep.
Well, and I read an interview with him. I think it was like Rolling Stone or something.
Okay.
And he said that photographers never want him to smile. When they take his picture, he said they never want me to smile.
Oh,
And I guess that's why you see this sort of,
really severe face.
the way I had the Jason character described. There's a really fun character in the book. His nickname is Sugar Van Zant.
I love it.
And before Edie meets Jason, the other women are talking about him. And so Edie goes, well, who's this Jason guy? And Sugar says, well, I think she says he's appealing, very appealing, but in a disturbing way.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I hope Cillian Murphy hears this someday. And it's just like, oh, those two ladies. Let me just go have some coffee with them because we're just gonna have coffee and sleep and
Just chat,
you can smile all you want. I probably won't see it, Cillian, because I'm gonna be sleeping, but you smile away. Oh, Valerie, we have gone on a wild journey on this podcast. I think it's probably double the time of a normal podcast, but I'm good with that because this was fun.
This is fun. I look forward to talking with you.
Maybe you awaken a little bit of my Southern girl inside. Maybe it's just a spark that needs to get fanned into a flame.
Come on down.
Well, I for sure will come on down, at least by reading your book, The Light on Horn Island. It comes out April 2025 by Valerie Fraser Luesse. And it's published by Revell Publishing. And you're on the internet, so we can find you, right?
You can find me. ValerieFraserLuesse.com is my website, thanks to my publisher who created it for me because I'm way too old to create a website. But I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good. And I apologize for any ring-a-ding-dings that you're hearing in the background. My cat has now discovered a ball with bells in it, and he's doing gymnastics behind me. So anybody who's watching in the background can see him doing something.
We'll leave and just leave the camera on.
I was just going to say, we'll just leave it. We should just have a live feed and people can just, go to the foo feed. Oh, the foo feed.
That is awesome.
Oh my gosh. All right, this podcast took a bad turn. So let's end while we're ahead. Valerie, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And that's a wrap for today here at Madlet Musings. I hope you join us again. And if you want to, be sure you like and subscribe here at your favorite podcast player or on YouTube, because you won't want to miss all the wonderful alerts that let you know when we have another conversation for you to eavesdrop on.